afternoon. My name is Julián Grandvallet Contreras, and I would like to welcome you to the first international cycle of creators in science and arts, organized by the Colegio de Investigación Interdisciplinaria en Ciencias Sociales, Red Iberoamericana de Investigación en Imaginarios y Representaciones, Grupo de Trabajo, Corporalidades y Tecnologías de la UNAM, Instituto de Formación e Investigaciones Jurídicas de Michoacán, Clínica de Derechos Humanos y Derecho Ambiental de la Universidad del Estado de Amazonas de Brasil. We thank the organizing committee and everyone who is joining us today. It is a pleasure to welcome Dr. Violeta Alejandra Chávez Bautista, PhD in Political and Social Sciences from UNAM, philosopher and researcher specializing in political theory, human rights, migration, and the study of statelessness, citizenship, and contemporary forms of exclusion. Dr. Violeta, thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you so much, Julian, for accept to be here supporting this organization and this work trying to open the knowledge to universal status. As you said, I'm researcher on the topic of statelessness, and to me, it's a great pleasure to be here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. Yeah, in current public debates, we often hear about migration, citizenship, and human rights, yet some realities remain largely invisible. Can you share with us what is statelessness and why do you consider it a key issue for understanding the contemporary world?
Well, thank you for the question. Statelessness is a condition in which people who is not recognized by any state lives. Around the world, the estimation is for 2023, 4 and 3 millions of persons. But it's not a real number because a lot of people in the world doesn't even know or consider that they are statelessness persons. So we can see on the statistics generated principally by ONU, United Nations, that statelessness the numbers of stateless people grow each time that we have conflicts in countries. So it happened in Latin America when the Colombian conflict was in the top. It rises in República Dominicana and Haiti when they made a new law saying that the descendants of Haitian people living in Dominicana were not Dominican citizens. But in Latin America, it's not so common as in the rest of the world because the constitutional structure of our states, it means there are some states in which the right to be a citizen depends on to be the son or the daughter of people who already got the nationality. This is which in Latin law, the Latin structure of the law, we call ius sanguinis. Also, there is another way, which is to born in the territory of the place. And this is also from the Latin structure of the law. But in Latin America, we got both. Generally, we got both conditions. So anytime that you can prove that any one of them, you are immediately national. But in Europe, in some countries in Asia, in some countries in Africa, and they have not this structure of the law. The state has been designed to exclude people. If you didn't born in that place, you cannot be a citizen ever. If your parents are not from that place, you cannot be citizen ever. We got many examples of this. As example, I would say that the Czech Republic, if you're born in that country, but your parents are not from that country, you will never have the right to be a citizen just because you're born there. In Latin America, that's not common. If we born here, we are Mexican immediately, no matter where your parents from. So it can be even worse when we find some social, legal, and political conditions like racism, particularly racism. These kind of discriminations that can be found or accepted just because the color of the skin, the origin of your parents, the origin of your family, or even because your religiosity. We got very, as a humanity, I mean, we got a very hard trouble in Asia with the Rohingya population, which is Muslim population living as a nomad, crossing many countries in Asia. As example, Myanmar, that are not accepted as citizens for anybody. And the cause in this situation, we can say that it is discrimination because of religion and linked to race. So anytime I was saying that the conflicts grows, many people start or is in the risk or become a statelessness. And as it is very easy to see now, we are facing very too much troubles in the world and too much conflictivity and the rise of the ten the rise of the increase of this kind of racism, classism, discrimination by gender, religion, and so on, as an excuse to exclude people from rights. It means, naturally, we can say that the state as a system, as a political system, is not an internal thing. The state born during the 18th century in Europe, and it has been translated to all the rest of the world that had been colonized as Latin America. And someday, as a system, it will maybe disappear. So you can think that it is not so important to be recognized by an state, but even when it can be understood as a very simple thing, it got effects on the material life of the people. If you have no documents presenting, saying that you already exist as a part of a state, like a birth document or an ID, you cannot do almost anything in the formal world. You cannot have a register of your education. You cannot have access to health insurances or social health for the people. You cannot vote. You cannot marry. You cannot have an heritage. And there is a lot of complications for these people just because the lack of paper. And this complexity, how this problem is so big that even the human rights structure recognizes that identity is a fundamental human right. So that's why, in my opinion, statelessness is so important. In my perception, Latin America is running, is in a risk to increase the number of people living in statelessness for two reasons. One, inside, because we have people coming in very large groups of migrations. And also because we have a weak administrative system that is not able to register all the people. Around of this, which are big reasons, we have details like discrimination, the sometimes the bad attitude of the public servers that they don't do their work or they don't have the tools or they don't can understand. They can't understand sometimes how important it is to have an identity, an identity card. So this is the reason because I consider statelessness is big trouble apart of what it implies for the theory of the state. We can have any statelessness if we have no state. It's a logical and ontological condition. Thank you.
Yeah, so the concept of statelessness is inherited on the mere concept of a state. So they both will coexist. But now the question here is that if you go to the numbers, I'm sure that we won't see that much of diversity in the in the people that has this specific condition or like that are statelessness, right? So I'm sure that statelessness for the state that is receiving these people is selective. Have you seen those kind of things happening?
It is very hard to to prove that. It's an to me it's just like an intuition now. Uh because the research is very young for the political theory now. Even we have no political theory about the statelessness that is strong enough. The studies started from the end of the Second World War because we have these big migrants masses moving around Europe and they have no nationality. And we know that with the war, the Nazi regime take off the nationality of people that they didn't want to be there, like Jewish, like Asians, like Russians, like communists, etc. So the study didn't started too early in the comparing with the time in which states born, which is 18th century, as I said, but in 20th century. So we have no big theory, but we got registered from big international organizations because it's very this study requires a lot of foundings to do and a lot of personnel because we have sadly we have a lot of refugees areas in the world, particularly in around places that have been had civil conflicts and wars. People move trying to find a place in which they can live or they can survive, in fact. So in these cases, some people go there and try to quantify where are they from, if they have the name, if they have a nationality, and other data that we have to register to in order to know what is happening in our world with people. Um, with these numbers and crossing the personal characteristics of the people, we have noticed the causes, the regular causes of statelessness. One is that there is totally, I dare to say, the total amount of the people is poor people. One person who's rich is a tourist.
Mhm.
People who's not rich is a cosmopolite tourist that is a citizen of the world and had access to anything, even special residences, cards, and so on. Once that they have the money to pay for them and to prove that they don't want to work. Um, but poor people is an immigrant, is an illegal, and it can be also an stateless person. So this is one of the first signals that we can see in stateless people. Other one is in countries that they got laws that they are too restrictive against women. We can see that women have no right to inherit their names to their sons. They have no right to transfer the nationality to their sons. And so, if the state or the husband or the father of the baby don't recognize the baby, this baby is immediately, automatically, an stateless person. Um, some countries, this is the second reason. Uh, Other reason is when there is a majority of the population belonging to a religion or a ethnical group, the one who are minority can be try the majority can try to expel them. And one first step, one formal step to do that is to deny documents to them. That's what happened in República Dominicana, as I was saying before. What the government from República Dominicana said is that there is not job enough and food enough and comfort enough as would be receiving Haitian people. So that's why they declared that law, saying that the son or the grandson of a person from IT is not Dominican, even if they born there. So when they retire the nationality, this person, these people who become stateless, they lose even their studies. They cannot prove that they study because they have no ID anymore. So it's a very complex problem, and we have just the intuition because as a social problem, we should study this from the reality. We need to go to those places in which we think that they are stateless people and try to know them and try to see why are they in this situation. So those are some answers to that question that you gave to me. Thank you.
Great. Yeah, it's very interesting. But uh, philosophy and political science uh, are very broad and have a lot of branches. So, what specifically sparked your passion for this topic, and mainly how did you come to focus your research on statelessness?
Well, thank you for the question, Julian. I think it's to me it has been easy. I didn't even uh, calculate this. When I was studying philosophy, I was very interested. I mean, I as a first education for bachelor, I study in fact classical music, and this this sensibility for the beautiness also make me ask why we can live so bad situations and how we can see so bad situation in the world, uh, even when we as human beings can be so creative, I mean, and to put so beautiful things in the world. How is this possible? And looking for this, I started philosophy and focused in politics. Um, Starting in that point, trying to understand in politics from philosophy, I found this concept, which is exclusion, trying to understand why we, as a humanity, no, not personally, uh, why we separate some persons and put them apart and deny them the right to even exist just because we don't like how they look or how they wear or how they speak or the language or their age or that they have no the common physical functions. So this there are many like as rich are the ways in which we can create knowledge, science, and beautiness to this world, as rich is the way in which we can exclude people from the world. And that way in philosophy took me to study how do we belong. My first studies were about citizenship. Citizenship became a very important word for democracy, for state, and for civil, political, social rights. And that was my first study. And when I was trying to understand how do we belong politically, no matter our culture, supposedly, I found that there are some people that they are citizens, but they don't even belong or they are not so respectable as the other citizens. Those are the indigenous communities in Mexico and Latin America. And I think now, quite sure now, that all the native communities in the world faces that situation. They are citizens, of course, from this state, this modern state, but they have not the same rights or the same respect about their cultures and traditions. This took me to find some persons that are even worse in a war situation. They are not even citizens. Those are the stateless people who, of course, that they got a culture, they got a family, they got personal links with another people, they got a life sense, but there is no state saying this person belongs to my community. And it shows how important is in a theoretical approach, how important is to continue thinking about the state, about how we build the states, and to have a critical perspective about the state in particularly in my studies, how we build states in Latin America, just understand what can we do to make it better.
And do you believe that we could build an state that doesn't produce statelessness people, or we are trapped and forced to go to a system related to some kind of anarchy or something like that to get rid of the concept of a state?
That's a very painful question because I have no answer for this. I I think that sadly. I'm very sad about this. Once we consider the state in a theoretical perspective, like um, the group of something, like in mathematics, there are some groups like in circles, no? Those
Mhm.
are the states, and there are elements that are not into those groups. By definition, to have a group means to deny the belonging to some elements that don't share any thing with the internal elements. This is a very strong, I don't think if paradox is a word, but the French philosopher Jacques Derrida took the word from Greek, aporia, which is the impossibility to pass through some limits. So if the rationality, the Western rationality, says that to construct knowledge, just to define a concept, when we make science in all the areas of the science, to define the concept, take us to say how this thing that we are defining is related with other things, how it's different to other things. That's the main thing to define something and to create knowledge. Well, the same happens with people. If we define a taxonomical group, we have to exclude. And in this sense, I feel sometimes that state works like this. State is a or nationality, which is another discussion because it supposes that state is not it wasn't related to nationality in the past or in the origins. But that's another discussion that I want to don't want to distract me with this. Uh, but in a very epistemical way, it looks like nationality or citizenship is a kind of taxonomy. Once you get this class or for the taxonomy, you have to say which one belongs and which not. You cannot put cats in the taxonomy of the dogs. And that's if you listen what I'm saying, it sounds like I'm defending racism.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
I
horrible.
understand. Yes.
But it's horrible to see that this is in the heart of the creation of the state. And I would love that I'm wrong. But it keeps me trying to think what can we do? Is maybe it's not possible that some days it change, or maybe it is. I like sci-fi. And I'm quite sure that I will not be alive to see that, but I want to apport to give something to make it more probable, not possible, not real, but a little bit more probable that there will someday that we don't live as if we were classes or groups of isolated beings.
But now that you mentioned this, is I mean, you have to think that the concept of a state is a polarizing concept because even though when we are kids and they teach us in school, well, this is our flag, this is our nation, or this is our country, and these like the patriotism concept that I think that every single country teaches their kids. For a state to be a state, this is for people to be identified like we are from here. At the same time, there has to be a they are not from here, right? So we include ourselves, but at the same time we exclude others. Yeah, that's
Yes, it's a very complex. You as a um, biology scientist, you surely know this taxonomic. Taxonomic is inclusion, but it's necessarily exclusion.
Yes.
Definition is inclusion, but is necessarily mandatory exclusion. And it's a very amazing thing to try to think if there is any possibility for human rationality or human capability to make science to stop this structure in your thought that lead us to exclude, because this is the material consequence. This is a very sad material consequence, but
Yes.
that's the reason, because in philosophy we have a very big trouble during the last years, 100, 200 years, talking about metaphysics and talking about those kind of concepts. When you stop in science, I mean, when you stop in science to think that those categories don't, it's at least possible that those categories that I'm using in science, they don't exist in fact in reality, but are only my ways to approach to one phenomenon or thing, but they don't exist by themselves. They are my creations to try to understand something. If you stay in that part of the science in which you get a little bit of doubt, you will have no this consequence. But if you affirm constantly that some system is like this and there's no way to modify and there is nothing to do because A is identity to A. These are the basic rules of logics. If you don't stop with this, you will have these consequences. Of course, if we have these kind of logics that talks about groups, we also have fuzzy logics. Is the word didn't finish? We can think about in another ways. We got even a lot of scientific theories. So that's even talking about exclusion and about the suffering of so many millions of people in the world, which is a social, political problem, a humanitarian trouble. I I got hope about this topic from I like to say, from the heart of the science. The science has been growing a lot. When we say that identity law is not necessary. It works for some things, but it doesn't work for other things. And it's the same with people that belong to one nationality. It's good for some things. As example, some people they defend their territories, particularly now that we have these troubles, so many troubles with resources or natural environments. They defend their territories and they call to think about their belong to some communities, particularly native communities. And in this way, it's a very useful interpretation of belonging. It helps them to survive. But when belonging helps to destroy, to put apart, to make people suffer, it doesn't work.
It is a very interesting topic that uh, I don't think that a lot of people have been studying. So hope it's glad to hear what you have to say about this, and it's also glad to see that there's people actually doing research on these topics. So that's my next question about it's about regarding the methods of your research. How do you approach the study of statelessness, and what questions currently guide your work?
Well, it is very difficult to have access to the places in which we have stateless people, and for many reasons, because they are far or because people don't catch in which situation they are. But we have sources in the datas of United Nations, in some studies. So my work is has been more documental work, checking data, checking studies, trying to organize in a theoretical structure that allows me to understand what is happening and why it is happening, and also what we can do. But now, for the next step, I'm thinking that even when stateless has been not studied enough, it has been studied from the perspective of international affairs. I mean, generally, people that has been declared stateless people is because they cross international borders. But we have a very hard issue here in our countries in Latin America, because we have people that even when they born here, they become from parents from here, they have no identity cards because they have no access to a public registration system. So they are stateless in their own countries.
Yeah.
And it's a particular it's a common thing in these people that they are poor again. They live in rural areas in which it's hard to, there are no stable ways to connect places. And also, they are from indigenous communities. And with this, we can interpret that the state is acting in a discriminatory way because is avoiding these people to enjoy the right to identity just because they are living in poor places. So this is my next well, the work that I'm trying to do now is not gonna be easy, but we have to know what is happening in order to change it.
Many young people are deeply concerned about these topics like migration, citizenship, human rights, because are things that they can experience every day, like people seeing like outside their houses, uh, migrants that are walking all the way from Guatemala or southern, all the way through the States or other countries. But they may not know how to engage with these issues, at least academically. So, what advice would you give to someone who wants to study statelessness or pursue research in the social sciences?
Thank you. I think that um, it is a good way to introduce into those kind of studies to try to read a lot of areas of knowledge. I mean, we have to learn about geography, about demography, about economy, political science, theory of the state, philosophy. We need a lot of resources um, in order to try to build a kind of a stable theory about the statelessness. We are in time, I consider personally that we are in a time in which we can build a theory of statelessness. There are some few efforts in this way, and we need to open our eyes in the common, like the sociology advises us, in the common and quotidianity, to see what is happening, to see the things with sociological eyes, and also to take resources from a lot of different theories and a lot of different sciences.
Wonderful. Violeta, to conclude our conversation, what message would you like to leave with those who are joining us today regarding statelessness and mainly our collective responsibility in the face of exclusion while being part of a state that, as you have mentioned, forces us to do that?
Thank you, Julian. I would like to say something that I have been thinking during the last times. Sometimes when we do research of about painful situation, and I think that you will understand it very deeply. I think that you know this feeling. Sometimes people feel afraid about to see the suffering in other persons. And that's why we stop to do researching and we prefer to move aside and to research about some topics that are not so aggressive for our feelings. And my message in this sense will be that we can be brave. We can take the risk to see the suffering in other people. We are not gonna die with this, I think. But we can give a lot of answers. Even if we make mistakes in our research, we will give an answer saying, this way in which I resolve this is not the right one. So try another one. That's an appreciation. That's a gift for solve troubles. So I want you to all the people who gave us the time to listen this about this topic, which I know is not common to talk about, that they dare to see, uh, open your eyes to people suffering and try to study and keep some of your intelligence. We all are very smart people and we all can do something.
Yes, I agree. I think that, well, as you mentioned, taxonomy, we are social animals and we need everybody needs everybody for very different reasons, and we cannot be obnoxious and just ignore what is happening with the suffering of these people. So I'm glad that you're here with us because we can hear what you have to say, and trust me that I truly admire your work and that people like you is needed. So we encourage other people to also join you in any science, but also in the social sciences, because as you mentioned, sometimes it's not easy, and you have to face uh, a lot of things that are happening to the world which sometimes are not like very gladly to see, but this kind of work is really, really needed. So, Doctora Violeta Alejandra Chávez Bautista, thank you very much for sharing your time, your reflections, and your work with us. We invite the audience to follow her on social media and to learn more about her research and academic activities. We would like to once again thank the Colegio de Investigación Interdisciplinaria en Ciencias Sociales, Red Iberoamericana de Investigación en Imaginarios y Representaciones, Grupo de Trabajo, Corporalidades y Tecnologías de la UNAM, Instituto de Formación e Investigaciones Jurídicas de Michoacán, Clínica de Derechos Humanos y Derecho Ambiental de la Universidad del Estado de Amazonas de Brasil, as well as the organizing committee and everyone who joined us today. We invite you to continue watching and listening to the rest of the interviews in this outreach cycle. Thank you very much and see you next time.
Thank you. Thank you, you too, Julian.
Thank you.